Okay, condition presentation, autism spectrum disorder. I did this with my dyad partner, Casey. He was role A, preparing a video presentation or summarizing a video presentation, and I was role B, so I had to summarize an article about autism spectrum disorder and provide you with 3 resources having to do with autism spectrum disorder. So, without further ado, let's get to my part. Okay, so the articles. I did read a ton of articles. There is a wealth of knowledge out there if you ever do need to learn anything about autism. I selected Parental First Concerns and Timing of Autism Spectrum Disorder Diagnosis because it spoke, well to assessment and diagnosis and criteria and the roles that parents play and pediatricians play and the need for early detection. So I also put the link down here at the bottom if anyone really wants to read the article. No pressure, but it's there. Okay, my summary. Don't try to read it, it's really small, so I will read it for you. Okay, this article was about the importance of early diagnosis that leads to early intervention for children on the autistic spectrum. Autistic spectrum disorder, or ASD, is a neurodevelopmental disorder characterized by social impairments, lack of communication skills, and restricted or repeated stereotypical behaviors, otherwise known as stimming. The authors point out the vital role caregivers and pediatricians play in early detection of symptoms. Parents were asked to participate in a study by answering survey questions about their ASD experience. The main questions asked were, how old was your child when diagnosed? And what are the first symptoms you noticed that caused concern? The most common signs or symptoms were lack of eye contact, speech delay, not answering to one's name, strange response to stimuli, and sensory issues, and then focusing only on an object or oneself. So pretty much ignoring the rest of the world and going inside themselves. Speech and language development were the most commonly reported signs for children diagnosed before the age of 3. Children diagnosed later in development were seen as having difficulty in social settings and were oftentimes discovered by a teacher rather than a parent, which makes perfect sense because school is the first opportunity we all have to experience social settings and experiences. These children would most likely have been diagnosed as having Asperger's syndrome, which is a less severe autistic diagnosis. Asperger's was removed from the DSM, so today all children are just placed somewhere on the autistic spectrum disorder. And on a side note, it did not go over well with the Asperger's community. A lot of people don't want to be lumped into just a autistic spectrum diagnosis. They don't feel that they are that severe. On the other hand, some are very concerned that because they only have a minimal amount of symptoms or signs that meet criteria, that they won't get a diagnosis of autism, and then that will affect their services that they qualify for. Just a little tidbit. Okay. In 2001, the American Academy of Pediatrics released a policy statement helping pediatricians to recognize early signs and symptoms and to encourage them to listen to parents' concerns about their child's development. No longer will they wait and see nor dismiss any parents' concerns about their child's development, which is actually kind of nice. Today, we take our children to around 11 well checks before they're even 3 years old. This is an opportunity for pediatricians and parents to run regular checks on the child's development and milestone accomplishments. I don't know if you guys have children, but I do, and I can tell you that it is a battery of questions each and every time you go. And it's pretty much the same battery of questions each and every time you go. So the chance of them missing something in developmental wise or lack of milestones is pretty difficult. So that's a positive. That's good. Okay. This supports the need for early detection and early intervention. It also supports the need for parents to be informed about signs and symptoms to look for as their child develops. When a child is diagnosed early enough, delays can be minimized, development can be optimized, and parental stress can be reduced not having to deal with untreated autism spectrum disorder. And it's a shame that a lot of people put it off because they're in denial. And then they are stressed and having to deal with an undiagnosed child when they could just have services to make their life a lot easier. Okay. National web resources. There are a ton of resources online, so it was hard to narrow it down to 3, but I did. So the first one I selected was Spark, sparkforautism.org. Their mission is to speed up research and advance our understanding of the diagnosis. This organization is trying to get people with autism to participate in research studies to speed up the process of figuring out how we end up on the spectrum in the first place. And they feel the only way to do that is to get as many people with the diagnosis to participate in studies and research. So that's an awesome site. The second one is Autistic Self-Advocacy Network, or autisticadvocacy.org. This one is run by and for individuals on the spectrum to advocate for themselves. They have a wonderful little motto, nothing about us without us. And their goal is to be a resource for those living on the spectrum. They believe firmly that with knowledge and support that they provide on their page, they can empower those with autistic spectrum disorder and help them to take control over their lives. And let's see, last but certainly not least is Autism Speaks. I think this one was the popular one to begin with, and they used that fun little puzzle piece symbol that's on the back of everybody's cars and on windows. And theirs is autismspeaks.org. Their goal is to enhance lives today and find solutions for tomorrow. Let's see. They're also a resource to provide education and spread awareness. They fund lots of research. They run the Autism Speaks Walk annually. It's their big fundraiser. It's always very well attended and supported by communities. They provide grants, and they also, just like the other ones, want to help people who are on the spectrum, off the spectrum, dealing with people on the spectrum, just want to learn about the spectrum. Very big on the awareness of the signs and symptoms and providing the list of milestones and where your child should be at whichever developmental point they're at in their life. And yeah, so all 3 of these are awesome resources for education, for grants, for anything that you need. You can find it on these sources. And I think that is about it for my section. Sorry, that's my dog's in the background. And then here's our references. And that is it.